welcome to the Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm Lesley Kaplan, bringing you another inspiring speaker every single Monday. So who is our speaker today? Sharon Rottman, well known to many of you in the Anglo circles, who is co-owner of Shemesh Media, originally from Wilmington, Delaware. She made Aliyah in 1991, and it all began by the simple creation of a neighborhood phone book that soon grew into a 500-page ShemeshPhone directory. Today, Shemesh Media helps local businesses and nonprofits connect with their audiences through bilingual community platforms, through digital marketing, through advertising, and practical technology solutions. So sit back and enjoy my talk with Sharon. Sharon, welcome to our Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm so excited to have you here as our guest today. I've known you for a couple of years. We've bumped into each other a few times at different events that I've run. And I know many people that use your services. You're a well-known name in Beit Shemesh in Israel. So welcome, and I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward.
Excellent. So before we get into the Sharon of today and what you're doing in Israel, let's take you back to Sharon as a child, growing up in the US. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, about your Jewishness, your awareness of Israel, at what stage it became a goal of yours or a dream or whatever you want to call it, or a vision to move to Israel to make Aliyah, and then we'll move forward into Sharon of today and Shemesh Media and everything that you're doing.
Okay. Probably not too many of your viewers have met someone who was born and raised in Wilmington, Delaware. Although there was a fairly robust Jewish community, we lived in an area where there really were very few other Jewish families. As a result, I did suffer as a kid being an identifiably Jewish child when I was in school, and I was beaten up not once and not twice. Not very pleasant. But in general, it was a lovely place to grow up in the suburbs there. And one of the things Wilmington is famous for, of course, is our last president, Joe Biden, who I met when I was a young teen, and my parents met him and became strong supporters of his. And actually, we worked on his first campaign, knocking on doors. And I have a picture with him from his first victory ball at the Hotel DuPont in downtown Wilmington from those days. So actually, there was no Jewish day school where I grew up. For high school, I traveled to Philadelphia every day, an hour and a half each way, to go to a Jewish school. But just before that, my parents decided that for my bat mitzvah present, they would send me to Israel. Now, I come from a very strongly Zionist family. I have great uncles who made Aliyah, one in 1924, one in 1960. But my immediate family had never been to Israel. And so when I was 12, my parents sent me on a youth trip. I spent the summer here, and that was it. I decided that at some point I was going to come back. I came back and described my experiences in such a way that my parents went to Israel the following year, and then we continued to visit. In fact, we came in 1972 for Sukkot, and then we had such a great time that my parents decided that we would come back in 1973. We were in Europe, in Paris, and the war broke out, the Yom Kippur War. Our flights were canceled to Israel. And my father managed to finagle us a place on flights to come to Israel during the war, like between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. How he did that, I have no idea. There was no one else on that flight but returning soldiers.
We talk about Israelis wanting to come back during the war, but for foreigners who hadn't yet taken the decision to make Aliyah, and with children, that's incredible.
It was me and my sister. When I look back on it, I can't even imagine. One of the defining memories of that trip was driving from the airport into Yerushalayim. And when we got to Yerushalayim on this Sheirut that we were on, this taxi, you couldn't even tell that you'd entered the city. Every single thing was blacked out. All the headlights of the cars were all blacked out, and all of the windows were covered. I knew what it was supposed to look like at the entrance to Jerusalem. And the city was just gone. Everything was blacked out. It was quite a time.
Wow, wow, it's
Yeah.
quite incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
not many people have that kind of experience.
Yes. So in
And
1978, my
despite that, you
parents,
still decided to make Aliyah. You still decided to come back. That didn't scare you away.
I have to tell you that at my second daughter's bat mitzvah, shortly before the bat mitzvah, like a day or two, I found a postcard from my grandmother for whom my daughter is named. This was like an unbelievable coincidence, Ki'ilu. I found a postcard from my grandmother in beginning of June of 19. She had come to visit her brother who had made Aliyah in 1960. And we had been, apparently my parents and my uncle and my aunt had been writing her letters telling her, you need to come home. Something bad is going to happen. And she wrote a postcard saying, I'm not budging. I'm staying right here. My people, my place. I'm not leaving. So you can imagine that my father must have been inspired by.
And that's incredible, where you obviously got that love and the passion for Israel from
Yeah.
what you saw and the fact that your parents brought you here, and also things like what you just mentioned.
So in 1978, my parents came with the express purpose of trying to buy an apartment here. And they looked and they didn't find anything. And the night before they left, my mother told my father, we're not leaving without a place. And the next day, they met a Kaplan and found a project on paper, which was all the way at the end of Jerusalem in San Simon, Old Katamon. It was like the end of the world. Lesley, there were sheep there the first time I came to visit. There were sheep walking on the hills there. It was just like a little knoll of grass. It was so not the center of town. Anyway, they bought that apartment on paper and it was finished in 1981. But there's a really great story that goes with that. My parents didn't really have the money to pay for that apartment. And when they came back to Wilmington, Delaware, my father decides he's going to get a mortgage for this apartment, right? Which is 6,000 miles away. We're talking about a very non-digital age in 1978. And there's no way they can possibly repossess this property. He goes to the bank trying to get a loan and they refuse him. He asks to see the manager of the bank branch. And he goes in and he tells him that he needs money to buy an apartment in Israel. And the guy looks at him and his mouth drops open. My father says, in Jerusalem. And the man says, in the Holy Land? And my father says, yes. And he says, if you will give me a letter written to my children saying that I had a part in buying a piece of property in the Holy Land, I will give you the loan. This is a true story.
Wow.
And he
This
gave
guy
my
was
father
a
the loan.
Christian
He was a
loving
religious
Israeli.
Christian. Yes, he was a religious
Christian
Christian.
loving Israel,
Yeah.
of Israel.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
That is a fabulous story. That
And
is
that's how
just
my parents
incredible.
bought this apartment, where, by the way, all my children have lived once they got married. I have my oldest son and his wife and 3 little boys live there now in Jerusalem. Every time I visit them, I think about the nachas that my parents get from seeing their grandchildren and great-grandchildren living in that apartment and enjoying it. And yeah, it's
Wow,
amazing.
what a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. And also, I think your parents could never have imagined at the time when there were sheep grazing on the hill what the area could look like today, buzzing in the middle of the country, built up the middle of the city. Beautiful, and the place to be.
Yes,
Wow, that is
absolutely.
fabulous. So let's fast forward a couple of years and your decision to actually come here, make Aliyah. You got married in Israel, got married in the States.
What happened was I had decided, after I came back to Israel a few more times, and during the 70s, I don't remember exactly, but I came back and did a summer course at the Hebrew University. Anyway, I decided that when I finished my master's degree, I was going to make Aliyah. And about 3 months before I finished my degree, I met my husband. And my husband had just started, was about to start, hadn't started yet, medical school. And I knew he had 11 years of obligations in front of him. And I knew that if we got married, it was going to be 11 more years until I made Aliyah instead of 4 months. So that's what happened. But I'm very proud to say that after he finished everything, 11 years later, 1 month after that, we made Aliyah.
Wow, that's fantastic. So he
And
actually
that
never
was,
practiced there. He practiced here in Israel.
He did practice there. The last 4 years of his obligation were to return a scholarship that he had been given by the National Health Service Corps. They paid for his very expensive education at Georgetown University. And in return, he gave 4 years in an underserved area, which was in Cleveland. That's where we moved to Cleveland. And he had an office there, and he worked there in an area where there weren't enough primary care physicians. So he worked for 4 years after doing his internship and residency, and then we came right after that. And that meant that I felt like I walked around with this sort of sign in front of my face all the time saying Aliyah. Every decision I made was made with that in mind. I had to be laser focused.
Wanting to start something too much because you knew you were going to pick up and leave, and just planning from all points of view. Wow, that's wonderful. This is so interesting because you meet someone through the different networking groups that we revolve around. We meet up at different occasions, but very often we don't get to hear these kind of stories, which is what I love. One of the things that I love about this podcast is that you get to know the behind the scenes stories of people, things that you wouldn't ordinarily know. Right now, you know someone in these particular years of theirs, but you don't always get to know what led them to make the aliyah and leading up to it. And some of the interesting stories that you've just shared now, which are very inspiring.
I've loved the podcast I've watched of yours for exactly that reason. They're always so much fun and interesting.
Right, thank you so much. That is the aim. The aim is to give exposure to wonderful Israeli individuals, nonprofits, or businesses making a difference in Israel. And you certainly do. And we're going to move on to that in a moment. But also to inspire us and just let us see a little bit about the personalities behind the businesses and the names that we know.
Okay.
All right. So on that note, this is a perfect note to actually, in time, to actually move on and share about Shemesh Media, about everything that you do. And it started off, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, with a phone directory and moved into a much, much bigger, broader area as we entered the digital age as well. So let's share with us firstly how it all started.
So it started like this. We made Aliyah. We moved to Jerusalem and moved into my parents' apartment for the first year. I was pregnant with a somewhat high-risk pregnancy. I wanted to be near Shaare Zedek. We lived there. And sometime during that year, had heard about Beit Shemesh. We came for Shabbat. We really liked it. There were like 10 English-speaking families here. And so we came back a little bit after that with another couple who were in our ulpan. Both couples ended up moving to Beit Shemesh. We were walking in old Beit Shemesh in the shopping center, which was the only shopping center in Beit Shemesh in those days. We're speaking English to each other, and some man comes over to us. This is so prophetic. It's unbelievable. He shakes his finger at us and he says, Lo medabrim Anglit bebeit Shemesh. Little did he know what it was going
to turn into.
Shalom medabrim Ivrit bebeit Shemesh. I'm telling you, that's for me the most dramatic statement about one of the really key things that's happened in this city. When we moved here, there were 17,000 people. There are now 170,000 people.
It's phenomenal how it's grown into such an amazing, impactful city, and with so many different areas as well. I have a lot of friends and colleagues here too.
Sure. So we moved here for a number of different reasons, but one of the reasons was that I really wanted to be someplace where we could make a difference. I felt in Jerusalem like I was a cog in a wheel. I didn't really feel part of a community. I really wanted that. And I knew there was so much to do here, to build. My husband was the first American-trained physician to move to Beit Shemesh. I have to say that I feel like he single-handedly raised the level of medical care in this city. I started being involved in the Vad Chesed, run by the wonderful Lisa Silverberg, who still runs it today.
Yes, who I know very well. Regards,
unbelievable.
Lisa. Hello.
And what I realized was the houses and apartments that were being built in the neighborhood next to us were starting to be completed after about a year or two. And I noticed that the original community of people who'd been there, this kind of small community, and this new group of people had nothing to do with each other. They weren't really interacting in any way. So I took my baby and I went around door to door and I collected names, addresses, and phone numbers. And I have to tell you that when we first came, we did not bring a lift with us or anything. For the first 3 years, I think, we didn't have anything with us. And maybe it was even more than that. Anyway, what I did bring with me was my computer, because even in those days, I was very technologically inclined. I brought my printer, my dot matrix printer, and my computer. So I sat and typed it all out, printed it out, and gave it a copy to everybody in the community. It started out as a page, and then it went to 2 pages, and then it went to 4 pages, and then in 1997, it ended up being a phone book. I met some lovely people who lived in the Haredi neighborhood right next to where I was living. And together we created this phone book. And it was English and Hebrew and it just expanded every year. And after a couple of years, I obtained my wonderful business partners, Ricky Fried and Percha Soloveitchik. Ricky now lives in Jerusalem. She's not working with us anymore, but Percha and I have been working together for over 25 years.
Percha too, who I also have had the privilege of meeting.
Yes, she's amazing. She's really the outside part of our business. I'm more the sit behind the computer and the back end person, though I do a fair amount of client-facing work in the last few years. And so together we moved from printing a phone book, which was done in tables in a Word document, to moving ourselves all the way fully into the digital age. The whole beginning goal of mine was to serve the community. So beyond wanting the people in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods to have a way to contact each other, I also realized that the people in the neighborhood next to us, in the first Haredi neighborhood that was ever built in Beit Shemesh, no one had anything to do in my side of the street in Scheinfeld and that side of the street. People didn't mix. And I learned about gemachim, which was not a concept that we had in Wilmington, Delaware. It's not really an American concept at all. And maybe in New York and places, but it was not a concept. I loved it. It was to me like the best of socialism, right? Sharing a product with others when they need it. And there were lots of gemach in this neighborhood. And I figured, what would happen if the people from my neighborhood go to that neighborhood to borrow things from those people? Maxi pet on Shabbat that they need for their kid, or it can only create sparks of holiness and connection between people. One is giving, one is receiving. I just thought it could only be good. And that was really the impetus. And then it started to take over my life, and I no longer had time to work at anything else. This was my work. It started out being a volunteer thing, and the money went to the Vadches. I used to take 5 shekels for the pages that I would give out. So then it became a business. And that's when I started working with small businesses on their advertising. The concept of advertising was non-existent in Beit Shemesh before we came.
There were no newspapers or anything, or probably not in English.
Certainly nothing in English, but There was very little in the way of advertising, even in the maybe one newspaper that there was at that time. And there was no phone book other than the Yellow Pages. And that was it. And the Yellow Pages wasn't a Beit Shemesh Yellow Pages. It was a Jerusalem Yellow Pages with Beit Shemesh listings in it. So my love for technology helped us to move into the digital world. We started out with an email list, which we didn't start, but we were given by some other wonderful Alim who started it when it was done in a very old school way. But it became a community hub. And in fact, a woman did her doctoral thesis on online community using our list as an example, because it was a new concept, an online community.
That's amazing.
And people like Ellie Birnbaum, who also was in the forefront of doing these sorts of things way back. And it went from there to a website and then into every type of digital marketing.
Share with our viewers when you say every type of digital marketing. If someone is a business owner, nonprofit, wants to reach the English-speaking clientele, share with us exactly what it involves.
There are many options. We still print a phone book because in Beit Shemesh, there are over 50% of the population who do not carry internet in their pockets all day long. They don't have smartphones. So even if they might use a computer sometimes, they are using that book and they're still using it heavily. And so it still exists. Okay, so what is available to a business owner? So first of all, our success is the success of the businesses we work with. And as a result, we consider ourselves part of their team. That's really part of what I feel like brings people back over and over to us, to their nonprofits that I work with over and over again on different events, and the same with businesses. Our best market is Beit Shemesh, and that's where we started, but we have expanded Everything we do is in both Hebrew and English, but our strength is really the English-speaking population. Everything in our phone book is on our website, but it's updated all the time. In addition to that, there's lots of dynamic information on our site, like events and all sorts of business sales and lots of useful updates. The goal of our website is useful information. And I really would like to think that between the ShemeshPhone and the website and the email list, that there are many Olim whose path was really smoothed by having all the information about Beit Shemesh at their fingertips in English. All of the organizations, all of the gemachim, all of the schools. We have 1,000 gemachim, 650 schools and so on. So all that information is available digitally and not only on our website. We also have 2 mobile apps, which are wonderful, one for Android, one for iOS. And in addition to that, a few years ago, we created a bot which sits on WhatsApp. It's like a Ish Kesher on WhatsApp, and you can query it, and anything that's on our website, you can get an answer to it and see it right inside of WhatsApp without ever leaving WhatsApp.
It's amazing. If you think about it, you can be proud that you are actually responsible, you and your partners, for keeping, I would say, so many people in Israel by creating the ability to get all this information, by creating community. And that's something really to be very proud of. Helping somebody's aliyah be smoother.
Yes, that's definitely been one of our goals. And we understood early on as the digital world developed that everyone likes to get information in a different way. There are people who spend a lot of time on Facebook. Other people are always on WhatsApp and they're not on Facebook at all. And there are people who still prefer to get email. So we try to be everywhere. And we send out a newsletter twice a week that gets over a 50% open rate. People love it. And the email list still exists. I thought it would die with Facebook, but it has not. We still have about 4,000 people on our email list.
And by the way, as people say, and I'm sure that you'll definitely back this up, Facebook and all our pages that belong to the other platforms, they're not really ours. At any given day, Facebook can close somebody's page, and we've seen it.
Turn the faucet off.
He said, help, my page has disappeared, or I've been locked out, whereas your email list is yours.
That is correct. And that's a very important lesson, as you've said, because I know people a few years back whose Facebook pages were turned off, and with it, all their income, because they didn't have those other channels. So yes, it's super important. But what this gives us is it gives us a way, every single thing that's on our website gets shared out to all of the channels. We're like an advertising agency with a twist, because we have our own platform. Advertising agencies don't have their own platform. We do. And it gives our local advertisers and those who want to get to the Beit Shemesh population, which has, by the way, I spoke to someone in the American Embassy, told me the biggest concentration of English speakers in one place is in Beit Shemesh. Even if there are more over the entire city of Jerusalem, it's not like here. And that's why they come here at least twice a year and bring the entire embassy, and they process all kinds of applications for Americans, because they can come here and have their complete day filled within about 2 minutes. When we post that, the wonderful Effie Goffin organizes this. He sends us the information, we post it. I'm telling you, it's closed less than 5 minutes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So is the area involved in anything?
Not at all. We stay far away from politics and from politicians. It's not in our best interest. We walk a very thin line between all the various communities. Everyone knows Beit Shemesh is such a sensitive situation with all the various communities that we have here. And so we walk a very thin line between this side and this side. And believe me, we've suffered a lot of abuse over the years from both sides, with people not liking. And so we're very careful. And what we do is 100% on our own. We don't have any interaction with the area, and that's fine. They advertise
with us. You prefer it that way. You're saying you're independent, totally independent.
We're independent. It's impossible to be independent. If you work with them, that's like putting my toe in the water. I could see that right away.
Then you have to represent and be their mouthpiece, and you wouldn't be able to maintain the level of independence and say what you want, do what you want.
But I have to say that they do see us, and they've told us this. The Dover has told us that they see us as being the one media outlet in the city without an agenda, and that we really do try to present the facts, because we ask them when someone, let's say something comes in that's like a big complaint against the area. So we ask for their side, because there are always two sides. Yeah. So we really try to stay apolitical and to as I said, bring people useful information. If there's going to be a meeting about a certain politician's election campaign, we'll post that, but that doesn't imply any support or agreement on our part. We'll post everybody's stuff within some limits, but anything that's within the range of normal or average, as I would say.
Very interesting. Could you have imagined this years ago, that you would be leading what you're doing, running this media company? And yes, look, none of us knew what was going to happen in the digital age. And obviously that involved also you and your partners learning and developing not only new skills, but upgrading technology and everything as you went along.
Correct. That's correct. No, actually, I am by profession in one of my former lives. I'm an addictions counselor. Actually, I did my master's in business. And after that, when I moved to Washington, when we got married, I ran a very large residential drug treatment program. I was the administrative head of a very large addictions program there for the 6 years that we were in Washington. And so, no, I could never have imagined.
Right. Did you use that profession at all here, or enter that profession at all when you moved to Israel?
No, it was only in the most nascent stages of being developed here, the entire addictions. I did look into it. And also my Hebrew wasn't good enough to have those kinds of conversations. I dare say it probably still isn't good enough to have the deepest kinds of conversations.
Yeah, really, totally identify with you there, because yes, now I'm working in consulting and everything else, but in South Africa before I made Aliyah, likewise, I was doing HR, interviewing, consulting, matching clients to interviews, etc. And you can't do that if you don't have the language when you first arrive in a new country. Many people have to rebrand and reinvent themselves.
That's right. My Hebrew is very good, but it's not to that level. I live in Ramat Beit Shemesh. Believe me, when I came to Beit Shemesh, I never imagined I'd be living among thousands and thousands of English speakers.
And of course, you provided the platform to help bring more.
I would like to think that it's definitely a schar for us. In any case, so we've expanded way beyond Beit Shemesh. We do work for our customers in America and all over Israel. So we use every tool that's at our disposal. We do a ton of organic sharing, which means that we have curated lists of WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups, hundreds of them that we're on, and we post for each customer where they need to be. And we do paid campaigns on those platforms as well, and on Google. And we really do anything that a customer needs. And we create newsletters for people. We write the content, but we also do all the technology side. We set up the accounts for them. We make sure everything looks beautiful. We send it out. We clean their lists up, whatever it is. We send out SMSs. We create graphics. We write content. We work with a nonprofit. Last year, we took responsibility for all the audio visual for their event, something which was really nerve-wracking, but we did it. And so we really try to be part of the team. And whatever we can't do, then we bring in people who are experts in those areas to polish up or fill in with a skill.
Everything is possible and doable. Just if something you haven't done, you outsource or bring them into your team.
We do, but it's not very common, thank God. There are 9 of us. We have a programmer on our staff who's amazing. We have content people who are incredible, and many things we're able to handle on our own, especially with AI.
How has it changed the way you do things, and how is it changing the way you see yourself moving forward?
Wow, I can't even begin to describe it. And the ways in which it will change things is a total unknown, as we all know. But what I would say is that the most important thing, and AI is forcing us to do this really important work, is to document every process in your business, especially those which are repetitive, but every process. A lot of times things get done, but we just do them and we don't really write them down or think about them. You've spoken many times about working on your business, working in your business, right? This is a working on your business thing. We just do it because we need to get it done and quickly. But it requires actually working on your business and making sure that the way this process is being done really make the most sense. And then, only then, can you try to apply AI tools. I have a son who's a programmer. He says to me every single evening when he finishes work, he says, Ima, AI is out of control. That's what he says. New AI tools today. I can give a couple of concrete examples of things that we've done or that we're working on. One of the things that we're working on is we maintain a lot of data. That's one of the values in our business because you know what's in the ShemeshPhone, all that information. But we also maintain a database as complete as possible with all the businesses in Beit Shemesh. Nobody else does that I know of. The city comes to us if they need help in this area. How do we do that? We have to keep our eye on all the WhatsApp groups. We have so many weekly circulars in Beit Shemesh that come out, many of them in Hebrew and in English. And we would have to flip through them and see where are the new businesses and check them against our current database. And there are many ways that we're finding new businesses, but that's one of them. So now I've been able to set up a way that can all be automated, and it doesn't require anybody's involvement in the end of the day using AI tools.
Amazing.
To process that without a whole big, long, very complicated, expensive, and time-consuming process. We've managed to automate a lot of different things, but it's a time-consuming process. Another example is we want to send out this newsletter twice a week. We send out 4 of them, actually, 2 in Hebrew, 2 in English. They contain everything that's new on our site for that week, because some people don't want to come and browse the site. They want to get it in an email. And so we've built a process where everything that's sent to our WhatsApp groups is automatically placed in a list, and then we can check off the items we want, and then it automatically formats it and creates an email. One button to send it out.
Wow, it's amazing. Listen, with everything that you're doing, I couldn't imagine, and you couldn't imagine running the size operation that you do without having all these tools in place.
Yes, absolutely. It's very true.
With that, share your vision for the future for Sharon being in Israel, Shemesh Media.
So writing proposals for customers is another area where AI can really help by giving it a list of all the products we have and defining parameters. How do I decide when I make a proposal which products to offer a customer, and automating that, because that's a time-consuming process for me to create a proposal each and every time and be able to do that in Hebrew or in English in a much more efficient way. That's another excellent use of AI. And reporting to our customers on the results. It's very difficult to do that because we use so many different platforms to advertise our customers, to pull together the Facebook stats and the stats from our site and from a newsletter they might do. So to be able to pull that into one report in a much more efficient and less time-consuming way, it's not something I've done yet. It's a goal for this coming time. I have such a long list, Lesley. It's as long as my arm, and I don't really sleep at night because I'm always thinking of new ideas.
You know what? I can totally identify with you on that, because that's in the mind of an entrepreneur and also a woman, is that when we go to bed at nighttime, we just don't let it go. It's always there. I remember the olden days before the cell phones were around, I used to have a pen and paper next to my desk, and the lights used to go off. And every couple of minutes until I fell asleep, I'd be writing something down. And then, of course, the cell phone took over from that, where I'm writing my reminders and things on the phone.
Absolutely. Because who can go to sleep when you need to offload those things from your brain in order to go to sleep.
Although, as any sleep professional will tell us, what we're doing is not that great. But you know what? We're women, we're entrepreneurs, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Wow, Sharon, that's been phenomenal. Any final words, something that you'd like to add?
I believe that the work that we're doing has a huge future in Beit Shemesh, which is growing by leaps and bounds. It's already grown times 10, and it's going to continue growing in the most unbelievable fashion. And to be very honest, the next thing for me is I'm looking for another partner who would like to come in and take over part of our business and a lot of our work, because I'd love to be sitting and working on all this AI stuff and spending less hours in my office. Thank God I have 7 beautiful grandsons, and I'd love to spend more time with them.
Listen, that is also a challenge for women, especially women entrepreneurs, let's say age 50, 55 plus, where your children are now having children and you're still super with your ideas and wanting to do things and bringing all these ideas to fruition and having to try balance it with family and everything else. So I can totally get that. So Sharon, if anyone is a potential partner for Shemesh Media, who should they get in contact with? How can they contact you?
Okay, I'd suggest 2 things. One is they can get in touch with me by cell. Call me on WhatsApp, 0545-290-995. And if you're interested in any of the things that I spoke about, the Shemesh bot, the apps, the website. Our website is shemesh.co.il, and you can have access to all of our tools at yes.shemesh.co.il/social. And you can find links to everything there.
Wow, Sharon Rottman of Shemesh Media. Thank you for making a difference to Olim in Israel. Thank you for making a difference, not only to Olim in Bet Shemesh, because your reach extends far further than that. And I thank you to our viewers for watching another episode of the Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm Lesley Kaplan, and we look forward to seeing you next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. Bye-bye.